Hello and welcome to another episode of the Investor Financing Podcast. And we're going to talk to an OG, or actually an old dog. And many of you might have heard or seen Bill Manassero. He is the host and top dog of the Old Dog REI Network, a blog and weekly podcast for people 50 years and older who are using real estate investing as its means to fund their retirement years and create legacy for their children and grandchildren. And Bill's got into real estate later in life. He had a very exciting career and actually spent 12 years in another country donating his time to help charitable cause. He was a professional musician. I mean, you've done a lot, tech industry, music industry. And so you were in Haiti about, was it 10 years ago?
It's been about, actually, I think about 6 going on 7 years. Yeah, since I've been there. Yeah.
And you spent 12 years there, though.
Right.
And
right.
during that time, as you were getting older, you were wondering what you were going to do with yourself because you didn't want to go sit on the couch and watch Oprah Winfrey every day. And you decided that you wanted to diversify your portfolio because you were in the tech industry. You had some holdings and stocks and things. And you said, okay, I'm going to learn the real estate investing business. So then you moved back to the States, you moved back to California, and you decided to start real estate investing. And I guess, where did you start? I mean, obviously, talking to you, you're a very successful person. So you had a little bit of means to get started in real estate. And then you set a goal of getting to 1,000 units. And I would have probably said a dollar amount of net cash flow, but I'm curious on why 1,000 units, just because it sounds like a huge number. And then also, where'd you start when you started to invest? Like you had some cash to work with, and what was the mindset to get into real estate? And actually getting into real estate 6 years ago is probably a pretty good time considering what's happened over the last 6 years. So give us a little bit of insight on that journey.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't something that I intentionally set out to do. We had our hands full. We have an orphanage, school, all these different things, vocational training programs and things for kids, primarily kids off the streets in Haiti. And we worked primarily, just trying to help get these kids started and going. And so I was very much focused on that. As time went on, we went through, there's a lot of things that happened in Haiti. There was the major earthquake that I'm sure you recall that happened out there. We were there on the ground when that happened. We've had attempted kidnappings on our life. We've had dengue fever and malaria, and my whole family. We just we've been through a lot of things there. That it's a challenging place. I mean, I love Haiti. I love the people, but it was as I was getting older and kids are growing up and they're going back to the States and going to school, and I've got grandkids, and I'm kind of going, okay, I think it's time. And that's where we started looking at doing other things. And one of the things that we had in Haiti for the kids is this program. It's a kind of a vocational training program. We have business incubators that we started, like a bakery and a jewelry making business, internet a commerce business, silk screening. I mean, just all of these different, different entities. So we were. I was looking at these businesses that we had started, and we helped kids get started. And it's really a fun effort, because in Haiti the unemployment's pretty severe there, and even if with a college degree, your chances of getting a job are pretty slim. And so we were teaching kids how to start their own businesses, basically. And one of them we did was a internet commerce, and it's sort of a drop ship model. And kids were doing amazingly well with this model, and were actually probably making more in a month than most people in Haiti make in a week. In a year, pardon me. And so it was something I was looking at. Well, maybe that's something I could do when I go home, because we knew retirement was coming close and wanted to do something. I just don't like you said, I don't want to sit around and collect seashells down at Laguna Beach or something and go crazy. I'm the kind of guy who always has to be doing a lot. So So that's where I have a board of directors on my nonprofit organization called Child Hope International, and there's a number of real estate guys on the board. And so I was kind of looking. There's a developer, there's a real estate investor. They're all Southern California based, and so I received some funds I didn't anticipate, and I didn't want to put it in with these other, as you mentioned, these stocks and so forth. I thought it was too heavily vested already. Plus, the market was kind of volatile at that time, and so I looked at other ways to invest, and was looking at other businesses that I could start, because I've started businesses before over the years, and was familiar with getting involved with startups. But I just thought, well, I'm just gonna try. I'm just going to do this passively. And that's where I found 3 turnkey properties. I was doing a lot of research in Haiti while I was looking this up. And I said, okay, I'm going to get 3 turnkey properties, and it'll just be a little cash flow generator. It'll, maybe, I don't know what it'll turn into, but for me, it was just diversifying. And hopped on a plane out of Port-au-Prince, flew to Atlanta. I bought a home in Atlanta, a single family home, went to Memphis, bought a duplex and another home there, and then hopped back on the plane to Port-au-Prince. And the next month, I'm getting money in my account, from the income. They had tenants in place, the places are already rehabbed, and I was going, this is great. This is kind of fun. And then I started thinking, well, let me get serious here. And so as we're planning our trip back to the States, I'm thinking, I need to have a goal, and I'm really very goal oriented. So I was looking at, what I could do, because I don't want to do this indefinitely either. I wanted to have a goal. I want to reach that goal, and then I want to pull back on it and be able to enjoy my retirement, and also spend time with kids and grandkids, and just enjoy that season in my life. So that's what I was working towards. I set this ridiculous goal of 1,000 units in 6 years, and you're right. I probably should have set the goal, on amount of cash flow. It was tied to cash flow, because I was looking at each door generating X number of dollars. So there was a science there, if there was any. I didn't know what I was doing, to be honest with you. I had never invested in real estate before, so I just started doing this, and it just, I set a goal of, at that point, it was like doubling the number of units I have each year. At the end of 6 years, I'd have close to 1,000, and that's basically where I set my goal at, and ended up in that process moving back to the States shortly after I acquired these other properties. And then as I started to do this, I started to realize there were a lot of people my age and older that were either approaching retirement or already in retirement, that were looking to do the same kind of thing. They were asking me, what about real estate? What are you doing? And asking sort of the nuts and bolts. And I'd be emailing people, and it just got kind of busy. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just do a blog and just kind of let you guys know the good, bad, and the ugly of what's going on with real estate as I'm trying to figure it out. And that's, that blog kind of moved into a podcast, and the podcast that started airing twice weekly, and it just kind of helped my goals too, as through the podcast and through the blog. We were able to not only was I able to meet a lot of great people that that I probably wouldn't have been able to meet otherwise, but it allowed me to network and to get investors, and a lot of other things that worked out really well through that process. So that's basically what's happened, and I have reached my goal, and now I'm starting to unplug from a lot of things, and getting much more passive in my investments, so that I can be free to be able to do. We're actually moving from California to Tennessee, and so we're going to head out there and take it easy. And not that I want to sit. I'm still going to be keeping pretty busy, but it's going to be a different kind of busy.
Are you moving to Knoxville, or?
We're actually going to Chattanooga area.
Oh yeah, yeah. I heard great things about Chattanooga. A lot of people are moving to Tennessee.
I know it is crazy. And, at first I wasn't like really excited about it because, there are parts of Nashville they call like, uh, LA, LA East, it's just crazy how many Californians are over there. But I really like the chat area, the southern area more because one, still great deals on properties if you're looking to invest. It's also just an hour away from Alabama, hour away from Atlanta, Georgia, the Carolinas. I mean, there's some of these great real estate areas are in that zone. So I kind of like that, and there's a lot of open spaces. We want to get some acreage and enjoy our land and maybe even the homestead a little bit, start growing stuff and doing things like that. But
that's pretty amazing. I want to go back, and when you started your nonprofit and you were talking about the poverty rate, and that most people can't even get a job in this country, right? And it made me stop and think how a lot of Americans we're kind of in an entitlement era, right? Like we don't ever stop and we don't think about, hey, we're not the only people on this planet. Like sometimes I catch myself like really having a bad day and I'm stressed out. I'm thinking, oh, like it's not going the way it should. And sometimes what I do is I stop and I drive downtown Las Vegas and I see all these homeless people and I go, listen, my life is so, I think people in America should stop and smell the roses, and they don't do that. And for somebody like you that didn't need to go, start a nonprofit and do it, and like, I don't think a lot of us realize. I'm 44, and I've been kind of selfish, I would say, if I had to look at it, that there's a lot of people there out in the world in general that are just in a far worse position than we are. And I hear so many people crying on social media about gas prices and this and that. I'm like, well, we're in the middle of a war right now. Think about the people that are dying. Like your gas prices being $2 more. I mean, we have so many opportunities here that like if you're born to the wrong country, you could be the smartest person in the world, you're never going to excel like you can in a country like ours. And so like I meet people like you, and it's like what, here's a guy that's been successful on multiple levels. I could just tell you've been professional musician, started your own companies, been successful in tech. Probably don't really even you didn't even need to invest in real estate. You would have been fine. I take it. And so, and then you gave 12 years of your life. And there's not too many people out there like you. That's why I would just want to unpack and say, that's amazing. I hear some of these stories once in a while and I'm like, God, like there are people out there that are good. Right. And so you're one of those people that, did something for the betterment of people that are less fortunate. And I think a lot of people that are self-absorbed, and sometimes we're focused on the me world when there's a lot of people that we should be trying to help. And if we had more people like you, we'd probably live in a bit better world is the point. So just wanted to recognize you for that, because there's not a lot of people out there that do things like that. And you didn't need to do it, and you for some reason you found this area of the world that people needed help, and you did put in place a lot of things. And it was cool hearing the stories about starting the e-com business, and that your legacy will continue there for years and years and years to come. So congratulations to you, and glad somebody in the world is doing something to improve the world. So that's good to hear, because a lot of the news and the social media now is just really negative, and it's good to like get these stories. They don't put these stories in the public as much as they should. So thank you for doing that.
Well, I wish I could take credit. Haiti wasn't even my idea; it was my daughter's idea, and that's what kind of brought us over there in the first place. We were touring around, as I mentioned, as musicians, and she we were at an event, a big, huge event, and there was a table there for, I think, Compassion International, or one of these, organizations that helps kids around the world. And she wanted to sponsor a kid, and sponsored this kid from Haiti. And she just got obsessed with Haiti. She's like 9 years old. And one day we're traveling around, and she's got this little jar of coins she's collecting, and I asked her, "What are you doing with that jar?" And she said, "Well, Dad," and she kind of looked at me like, your daughter would, it's like, "Are you gonna take me seriously or not?" Kind of thing. I didn't know. She acted almost like she'd want to tell me, and I go, "What really? What do you save?" And I was thinking a trip to Disneyland or something or whatever. And she goes, "Well, Dad, I want to build a hospital, a church, a school," and she just kind of rambled through all these things in Haiti to take care of the babies in Haiti, and so it just touched my heart. I just went, "Oh my goodness," I mean, when I was her age, I want to be, a rock star or whatever. I didn't want to be anything but what and so I was so moved by it. We got an opportunity to do a little concert tour on the island. And when we were there, my whole family was touched. The number of kids living on the streets, some as young as 3 or 4 years old, it just tore my heart out. And my daughter, we got off the plane. They didn't have like a tarmacs back then. You just come down the stairs and you're on the runway. And she, when she hit the ground, she got on her knees, kissed the ground. She said, "Daddy, I'm home," And so we were really moved by it. And after we went there and did this little concert tour, we met a lot of these street kids. It just one by one, everybody in my family was just kind of saying, "Hey, I think God wants us to do this," and I'm kind of going, "Oh, I'm not hearing it," I'm kind of going, and but it didn't take long before I did, and we just literally gave up everything and just and moved our entire life into, I think, like 14 30-gallon bins that we took. You could take them on planes at that time. And we got on this plane and headed over to Haiti and just started working with street kids. And so, it all came from my daughter. But I was totally blessed by it, more than I can explain. Anything I've ever done in my life, those were the best years. They're the toughest years, the most difficult years, but at the same time, the best years of my life.
Yeah, that's amazing. We'll change the focus now to real estate. Okay. Kind of where you kind of focus in the old Dawg REI network, right? And let's talk about the 50-something-year-olds out there that probably, and I think we should focus in on there's probably a lot of 50-year-olds out there right now that are not in a position to retire at 60 or 65, right?
Right.
It's probably scaring the crap out of them. I know, like, being 44, my big fear on the back of my mind is I die alone, broke, like in like this one little studio apartment, and that scares me.
Oh, that's depressing.
Yeah, I know, that's like my fear. But there's a lot of people out there that live paycheck to paycheck, and they're in their 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, right? And so I think, if you're in your 50s, you're kind of going, okay, well, yeah, I might live till I'm 80 or 90, and there's no way I'm going to be able to retire. The cost of living keeps going up. We have inflation. They got to do something, right? And real estate's kind of the tried and true way to create wealth. I mean, I think it's the biggest, money. It's the biggest indicator that it's made more millionaires than any other kind of industry. I don't know the exact stats, right? But we know that. So you design this kind of podcast towards that kind of avatar, this 50-something-year-old person. Maybe they're need to retire soon, and like they're not nearly where they need to be. What advice would you give them today? Like maybe they don't have the means that you had at when you started your journey, but they're make $100,000 a year, $80,000 a year. They live in California. It's not, they're barely getting by, right? But they know they need to do something. They may have a 401k. Where's the starting point for these people? Like, even to get the courage, right? Because they're kind of stuck. They're stuck. So what advice would you give these type of people?
You're listening to the Investor Financing Podcast. We'll be right back after this break.
Hello, Bo Eckstein here, host of the Investor Financing Podcast. Are you a lender, real estate professional, or vendor that provides products or services within the real estate investing and business owner space? We are offering a few sponsorship opportunities to get in front of a highly targeted audience. If you're interested, please click the link below for further information. We look forward to talking with you. Thanks. Make it a great day.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up, because that to me that's my heart too. I mean, we still have our nonprofit in Haiti, and that'll always be, a motivator and a big part of my why. But it was an article I read in the LA Times about this lady who was in her 80s. Her husband passed away, didn't have much, but he left to her. With that, she bought an RV, and she spends her life going from carnival to carnival to carnival, and that's the only place they'll employ an 80-year-old woman. And she does the carnival circuit to survive, and she doesn't make enough to really even repair her RV when it's broken. It just broke my heart when I heard this story, and that's kind of an extreme. There are people out there that are seemingly they did great, and they're and they got a nice home, and they've got all the stuff, but at the same time, I've been talking to people this last couple of months, and there's a lot of people that have their nest egg being managed by a financial planner, right? Right now, those people are scared to death because stocks in the market has just taken such a dive that they're wondering, is this going to recover, or is it going to get worse? So there is this. I mean, it's happening to all different people. There are those that are retired, those who are approaching retirement, are wondering, gee, am I going to have enough to be able to make it? Some people are living longer too. So this is where real estate for me is so great. Is one, I think you said it. This is the place where the average person can become wealthy, and you don't have to have an education. You don't have to really be able to do a lot. You can go in there. I mean, I talk to guys all the time, like I'm sure you do on your show. These guys started with nothing. They started wholesaling, and they built up their nest egg, and they were able to start investing in rental property. And then they moved from single family homes to apartment buildings and they didn't have anything to start with. And many of them didn't even go to college. And so it is one of those places where you can, but it's more than that. It's not just a get rich quick thing, which I think is really deceptive to a lot of people. You really do have to work hard and make the right decision. But the thing about real estate is that it is a tangible asset, and the stock market, bonds, those things are really not tangible. And you can't go there and kick the side of the building and know that this thing is going to exist, and it's always going to be worth something. Now, yeah, it could go down in price, it could go up. Fortunately, historically, real estate goes up. And so the good thing about it is that if you can do, and there's a lot of different types of real estate investing, I realize that. And you can do REITs, you can go into mobile homes, you can buy billboards, you can do all kinds of things. But the idea is, at least for me, that there's multiple ways to earn just from one investment. So let's say you buy a rental property, you've got tax advantages. Number one, where you totally reduce your taxes just by owning real estate. Two, you can generate rental income. Okay, so you've got cash flow, this regular cash flow coming in, and finally you've got the equity play, where you've got that property that is going to have value and increasing value over time. And then you have your renters pay down your mortgage. You're not paying it down, the renters are, and you end up with this great, not only a cash flowing machine, but you also have this tangible asset that's worth something that you can hand down to your children and your children's children. So for those of you that are out there that are thinking, what can I do? I'm in index funds, and I'm in tech stocks, and I've got Apple, I've got Amazon stock, all these, and you're nervous, it's just move into tangible assets, and some people are saying, gold and silver, and that's always going to be worth something too. It doesn't necessarily generate cash flow. There are ways you can do that, but it doesn't. And Bitcoin's the same deal. But idea is, that this is a way to not only gain wealth over a very short period of time. Now, in 6 years, I was able to reach my goal, and now we don't have to think about our funds for the future. It's feasible for the average person to do. And believe me, I didn't know anything about real estate other than owning my own home. There was really nothing, and I learned it all as I went along, and I made a lot of mistakes. But there's people out there that can help you. There's a lot of tons of great books and resources and podcasts and YouTube channels and all kinds of stuff, so that you can try to do it as smart as you can. But it was, all I had was 6 years, and that was my goal, and for me, it worked.
That's great. And what other than, so you've invested in some apartment buildings. What does your kind of portfolio look like? Do you just invest in multifamily? Do you do assisted living? Talk about.
I mean, I've been all over the board, and but I started with just these 3 properties that I told you about, and two single family homes and a duplex. And one thing I realized very quickly, and again, I'm learning, I'm like a sponge here, and I'm trying to pick up things as I'm going along. I'm saying I paid about the same for each property, except I kept looking at this duplex, because if I had a vacancy, it wasn't 100% vacancy, it's a 50% vacancy, right? And I don't have 2 roofs that I have to look at to replace at one point. It's just one roof, and there's one property tax statement and one insurance payment. Yet I've got like 2 properties, and so the economies of scale hit me really early on. I said, single family homes are fine, and I know a lot of people just kick butt with single family homes. But I saw the economies of scale, and I thought, gee, well, if 2 is so good, how would 4 be? Would 10 be? How would 100 be? And that's how you can accelerate your process that much further, is by looking at the economies of scale. Now, as you get to larger properties, it does get more complicated to a certain degree, and plus you don't want to take that entire risk upon yourself. And that's where you partner with people. That's where it could be a JV. It could be through syndication. There's various ways that you can take that entire risk off of one person. And so, and that's where I started to move, basically, is into syndications. Yeah. And we got into assisted living and some other areas too. But that just helps speed up the process. I know guys that I met, on my show, that I've had, their first investment was 100 units, a 100-unit apartment building. And that was their first investment. And so they just took this gigantic leap. But, I was in his 50s, and, he didn't want to have to go through the process of buying all these single family homes. And
I just interviewed the Donis brothers. You know them? They're like, they've got a great story. You should get them on your podcast.
Okay, I'll get their name from you after.
They're 2 twin brothers. That are 20, and then the older brother's 23. So there's 3 brothers. I was amazed when I heard their story. You'll love these kids. They're from Guatemala. They live in I think North Carolina.
Uh-huh.
And their mom still cleans houses for a living, but they are full-time real estate investors, and they're general partners in 600 units. And it was a really cool interview. I was like, I love hearing stories like that, because these kids are so humble. Like, they're so focused. They get up, they have their morning routines, their miracle mornings. Like, and I was like, if I was your parents, like, I could be their parent now. I laugh about that because I'm 44. I don't have any children yet, but I married younger, so I can have children later in life. But that's another story. But these guys, not kids, were really incredible. You should definitely get them. They're like, I was like, just blown away. But they were like early on learners. They actually dropped out of college, and their mom was like, you could tell their mom really brought them up the right way, just because they're the way they talk, their mannerisms. And And their mom didn't, I could tell when they were telling me the story that their mom was like, because she's, cleaning houses and working hard. She's like, she wanted them to go to school, get your
Right.
college education. But they got their first wholesaling check on their first deal they did, and it was $35,000. And then they showed their mom, and I was like, "What was that like when you?" Because their mom, I think they tried to borrow $500, like when they were starting out to do some marketing, and it was such a good story. Anyways, you got to get it. I'm going to email you their contact
Yeah,
information.
do that. See,
But
that's what I love. That's what neat thing about being a podcaster, is you do meet these people. And
yeah,
I know exactly the type of person you're talking about. They come on, and they're almost they have a benefit in their naivete. That they come into it, thinking, this is great. We're gonna, and they do it, and and it's amazing that they do it because really they don't think that it could fail. And I think that's the only challenge for some guys that my age and older is that we hated after so many bad investments or things that have happened that we're too we're just too, we psych ourselves out into not doing anything. Whereas these young guys come in and they're just like, oh yeah, I'm going to be wealthy. I'm going to, and they just think that they can't do it. And that's the key to their success is their mindset. It's just amazing.
yeah. I mean, these are kids that are like high performing. Like, they journal, they walk. I'm like, you guys are amazing. Like, you guys are doing everything that it takes to be successful because they're following these formulas. They're, he told me they paid, a lot of money for a high level multifamily mastermind. First, they started in wholesaling, which is great. You have no money, you got to wholesale.
Right.
Then they took another mastermind course with a Pace Morby, he's a really big subject to invest. He teaches people how to buy subject to the existing mortgage subject to.
Right.
And they started wholesaling those deals and they go, wait a second, multifamily. And then they went and, they took some of their money they made and they invested in the high level mastermind group. And now they're, worked their way in as GPs. Now they're not the shot callers on those deals, but they're helping raise capital and they're learning the business inside out. And I was just like, this is cool. It's so cool to see that. And that's why, the podcasts are interesting because everybody has a little bit different journey. And like I got into real estate I was in the residential mortgage lending when I was in my early 20s, or started when I was 20. And then I thought I was really smart. I bought all these properties in Nevada in 2007. And, it was an early midlife crisis for me. And because, that was a bad time on the West Coast in many markets. And my mortgage lending business, nobody could lend money anymore. So a lot of people don't know that there's cycles and there's downturns and there's .com bust and there's, and so kind of resonating back with what you're saying, a lot of these 50, 60-year-old people right now experience this downturn and maybe they own a couple rental properties and like they have such a bad taste in their mouth. Like, I was lucky that it happened to me at a younger age because I was resilient. Like, although I still have that monitor on, in the back of my mind saying, remember that pain, remember that financial stress you went through during 2007, 8, and 9, because it wasn't fun for me. I had to walk away from a bunch of houses. I sold what I could and had bad credit for a couple of years. Right. Luckily, I was in my 20s, and I feel bad for the people that were in their 50s, and that happened. People lost their life savings, and I couldn't imagine that. But I think like Colonel Sanders, right? And you kind of with your beard, you reminded me of Colonel Sanders.
But should have brought a chicken leg with me or something.
But he didn't start KFC till he was 65.
Yeah. Right.
So, I love what you're doing with your podcast. And I think that, that should be your next, big movement. I see it is really helping the 50 and 60-year-olds like figure out, because it really, a few years back, I started investing out of state. I was a big flipper in California, but I don't like to flip houses. But then I said, I'm going to start buying cash flowing rental properties, kind of like what you did. And I went out to Indiana. And then I set up a lead generation website, and about 4 years ago, a lead came in and this gentleman was selling his mother's house that he inherited. And it was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath bungalow in South Bend, Indiana. And he wanted like 15 or 16,000 for this 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 700 square foot bungalow. And I'm like, okay. And then I ended up saying it, I'll buy it because I was buying it sight unseen for like, I bought it for $9,600, and I put in $6,000, and to this day it's been rented out for $700 a month.
Oh my
So
gosh.
the
Wow.
point is, and it's now that little bungalow is worth 60,000 now. And so like, I guess the point is, it's like, you can wholesale property, you can buy in other markets where you can buy on terms, there's so many ways. And I think if you're listening to this right now, you gotta, like, that $700 a month to some people is a game changer, right? That pays for their food. Because if you hit 60 or 65 and you're on Social Security, I get calls sometimes and they own like a house and all they have is Social Security. And I'm like, how the heck do you live?
Yeah.
They're like trying to finance, back when I was doing residential loans. And I was like, okay, you get like $1,300 a month, and your utilities and your cost of living is like $700, like just basic utilities. That leaves you like $500 or $600 a month. I mean, like, I spend that in a week on food, and I'm thinking,
Right.
but there's a lot of people out there that are doing that. So I think what you're doing now is very important, even with the younger generation, these 20-year-olds and these people. A lot of people don't really have direction in their life, and I hope that, I think there's a movement right now that I'm excited about, that people are looking to be more entrepreneurial, to start e-commerce business. And that's what's exciting about what's going on right now. And so that's why I like doing my podcast. And I know, like, hearing you, being able to bring on different guests and educating people, it's great. Everybody likes to listen and, like, get one nugget from every podcast you listen to, and one takeaway. Who's been one of your favorite guests that you've interviewed on your show?
Wow, that's a tough one. I mean, we're over 600 episodes, so it's been a lot of great people. But I think the ones that, and it's a shame too, because you think I'd zeroed on an old dog, and although there are some amazing old dogs out there that just I love too as my guest, but I think one that really hit me, it was this young gal that's like 27 years old. She retired at 27, and she basically didn't do anything special, except that she understood personal finance really well, and she was very frugal. And her husband didn't have a lot of money. In fact, she went to college with the understanding that after she'd graduate, she wanted to go into sort of financial services. All the counselors were telling her, yeah, you're going to make 60 grand coming out of the chute. And she made 30 grand, and graduating. And so she just kind of felt the hit of reality. And I have like 7 kids, and a lot of them are getting that hit now. And some have had it for a while, but that reality that, hey, if I don't do this, I'm not going to sit around for 50 years making 30 grand a year and getting my 5% increase once a year, if that, and expect to really enjoy life. And so she's got really focused. Her and her husband became extremely frugal. They basically cut their bills in half, and they started looking at investing in real estate. And they, started off with, I think they bought a big house. They were in Kentucky. They bought a big house, and instead of renting the house out, they rented it out like a boarding house, is by the room. And so, instead of making maybe $1,200 a month, they were making $3,500 a month, by renting it out the room. And just making the real smart little decisions like that, and refining her plan as she went along, so that by the time she was 27 years of age, I mean, they had enough income that they could just walk away from their job. And that she's been on repeatedly, and she's just a great gal. She's really smart. She wrote a little book in the process. She wrote a little book about personal finance geared towards millennial girls. And so she's got the royalties coming in from that. I think she has another one, and she's probably working on a third one. So she's got all these multiple streams of income coming in, not only from the real estate, but the books she sells on Amazon and stuff. So it's just really impressive. And I have all of my kids, read her stuff when they, start moving into the real world and try to put together budgets and understand, how money works. And so her name is Rachel. Rachel Richard. And another a good guest you'd love to have on. She's just really fascinating. She's one of my favorites. I hate to have favorites, but and I've had Robert Kiyosaki and Ken McElroy and all these like really amazing people. There's one old dog that was just really fascinating. Sam. Sam. I'll think of his name here, but it's old dog moment here. But anyway, he really is, I think, one of the key figures sort of started real estate syndication. He came from the heart of Hollywood, where syndications were used to fund movies. That was a big thing. They would syndicate, you get a chunk of a movie, and if the movie does well, you get. Anyway, he applied it to real estate and started investing in LA, downtown LA. And he was, buying, office buildings in LA and flipping them basically. And it's kind of how he got started. And it was just fascinating. He's really old school. Like when I finally contacted him to come on the show, he wanted to meet me for lunch. He didn't want to just book it, or get an email. He wanted to know about me, which is really old school, but people do so much better. I think that we'll just like rush through these things. And so I got to meet him downtown LA, just a real amazing man. And I'm talking late 80s. And it still comes to downtown LA every day, suit and tie. And I'm just, this is crazy. And he just has his greatest stories. He just shares with I asked him, like, what your regrets you have. And he just had one answer. And I said, well, what, in real estate, you've done all kinds of things, all types of real estate and whatever. And I go, what's your biggest regret? And he goes, selling. He said, selling, because every time I sell, okay, all right, I see that same building, I'll pass by it. And, I thought I was so smart. I bought this building for $1 million. And that was a lot of money when he bought it. And then he goes, yeah. And a year later, I sold it for $2 million. He goes, today it's worth over 100 million. He's going, why did I sell it? And it's so funny. He's a character. It's like people like that just, from the very young, and we have a lot of young listeners, even though we target older folks, but the very old that have just, that I learn every day from, and so that's why I love my podcast. Because to me, I'm getting like, an MBA in real estate investing without having to invest the dollars required. I can ask these wonderful, just any question I want. And that's how I've educated myself. It's just through my guests. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I'm starting to do the same thing with my show, and it's just it actually keeps me energized. It really does. Like, because of COVID, I used to have a meetup group in the Bay Area, and I'd host it and bring in speakers, and I miss that kind of interaction. But the podcast is good because it's just you can network and with so many people and hear these stories. So I always get energized every time I interview somebody. I'm like, I get something out of it, and I'm like, I'm assuming there's at least one or two people that are like resonating with whoever's speaking at the time about their journey. And not everybody's going to like my story. Not everybody's going to like your story, but there are these people that like whatever you said today is going to change their life. And that's what's exciting. And that's the one thing I really love about the world today is this whole platform we have, like YouTube and iTunes and Stitcher and so forth, because you don't need to necessarily go and, if you don't want to, pay for a boot camp, or obviously you can, that sometimes streamlines the process, but you can literally tune into a podcast when you're driving. You get something that you didn't know, you implement, and you go take action, and you can do it. So it's been a really amazing pleasure to get to know you here for the last few minutes and or last hour almost. But where's the best place? Do you like them to go to your website, Old Dawgs, REInetwork.com?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Dawg spelled AWGS. Yeah. And we have articles, hundreds of articles. We have hundreds of podcasts. Just do a search. If you're looking at whatever it may be, you want to find out something on wholesaling, you want to find out how to put together a strategic plan, how to invest in syndications. It's just a wealth of information. We're real. We call it a no sale zone, where when I first started off, I was getting told constantly, and I went to this boot camp, and I have shelves full of these home study courses on everything from flipping, wholesaling, to you name it. None of which I ever have done, but I just want it to be a safe place where people can come and not worry about constantly getting pitched on something. So that's our differentiating factor there.
Well, Bill, I really appreciated the story. I got to learn about how you volunteered 12 years of your life for a big cause, and it continues to run. So that's amazing. And also I love how you're inspiring the 50 plus to go out there and take action in real estate. So everybody listening and watching, I advise you to start following Bill if you haven't followed him, because it sounds like he has over 600 episodes where you can listen to pretty good stories. So thank you, Bill, for joining us.
Thank you for having me on, Bo. It's been a pleasure and great meeting you. Hopefully to meet you in person as I move closer to Pennsylvania out there.
All right, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode.